Giving that a minute to kick in. All right, so everyone will start on mute, but we definitely want to encourage questions. So if you want to ask a question, please do feel free to raise your hand and we can unmute you. I also encourage you to write your questions in the chat or the Q&A feature. Um, This meeting is considered a record of all questions, and per our RFP, we record all questions and post the questions and the answers according to the timeline in the RFP. So we consider all these questions official questions that we can share with every interested applicant. And so feel free to write a question down or raise your hand and ask it. Happy to take questions. Just know that since this competition is open, I'm limited on the questions that we're limited on the questions that we can answer. We can answer any questions tied to the guidance in the RFP, but at this point, we can't answer any specific programmatic or application questions tied to your specific application or proposal process for your program. But if you're not sure, please ask. I can record the question and we'll do our best to provide a written answer, or I can answer it now if it's falls within the rules. So, I wanted to start out with similar to last year, this RFP hasn't really changed much. Given that I just recently started and we are trying to get the RFP out, and also the fact that this RFP is really strong and has been worked on over the years, we basically left it alone. So there's not a lot of changes from last year. So if you applied to last year's training, um, or if you applied to last year's RFP and you're familiar with YCC, there's probably not going to be a lot of differences here. So just wanted to share that with you all. All right, so I'm going to start off by pausing for just a second. Is there any questions? Any questions to start off with? All right, seeing none. I'm going to share my screen here. Can you all see the website? Thanks, Robin. Thumbs up. All right, so if you're here, you've probably already seen this, but we thought we'd take a minute to just walk through what's posted on the website. So as you can see here, our RFP is live. The due date, which you should obviously keep in mind, is October 8th at 4 p.m. Mountain Time. That is a hard deadline. Please make sure that you submit by October 8th, 4 p.m. Scroll down here. Here's the link to our actual RFP. You'll see down here the required response documents. These are our two primary documents that you'll be submitting, and we'll talk about these in more detail later on. Additional resources, we have a really nice YCC budget development worksheet, which will help you prepare your budget. And then you're obviously here for this training, but we do have another training on August 21st, similar to this one. It'll be an online training. You're definitely welcome to come back and check it out again. We'll also post the recording to these trainings on our YouTube site, which is right here. There are also a few other resources here. If you need assistance with grant writing, there's a link here. You can take a look at some of the training sessions that project sponsors have provided over the past few years. It's a good way to kind of see what other sponsors have done over the past several years if you're thinking about your training program. Field trip sites. This is a really cool list, whether you're applying to YCC or not. I believe Morgan put this awesome list together. It's a comprehensive list of cool sites in New Mexico to visit. I know when I saw it, I was like, ooh, I want to take my family there. So, really cool resource, really helpful as you're thinking about the design of your project. So please check that out. And also, this is a link to past projects. So if you're curious about previous projects and previous years, this will just take you to another part of our website where you can take a look at past projects. If you're new to YCC, you'll want to just start off by looking at the project basics and our rule. Um, um, so yeah, lots of great information on here. Please check out all of the materials if you plan on applying and read the RFP in full detail. All right, so I'll pause really quick there. Is there any questions? If you've just joined us, good morning. Thank you for joining. My name is David Chenet. I'm the director of YCC here with Morgan Tolan, my colleague at YCC. Um, all right, so give me 1 second here. So we're going to go over to our PowerPoint. So we're going to start by going through the key details in our RFP. And so as I'm going through this, as we're going through slides, again, please raise your hand. Feel free to put any questions you might have in the chat or Q&A feature. All right. So if you're new to YCC, if you just saw this opportunity and you thought you'd show up and check it out, I'll just share the kind of 10,000-foot view of YCC. The New Mexico Youth Conservation Corps was established in 1992 by the YCC Act, so we've been around a while. The purpose of the YCC is to provide a process for New Mexico youth ages 14 through 25 to be employed in public projects that conserve natural resources and provide community benefits of lasting value. Returning Corps members are eligible for 500 cash benefit or a $1,500 educational voucher. The YCC is funded by a distribution of state governmental gross receipts tax. I think that's important to know. We are not federally funded. If you're aware with some of the federal funding streams, those are a little uncertain now and moving forward. And so happy to announce that we are funded by New Mexico gross receipts tax, so not federally funded. The YCC is an independent agency that is administratively attached to MNERD, which is Energy Mining um, Natural Resources Department. Or yeah, did I get that right? It's kind of a mouthful. Um, so we are basically an independent small agency. That's just me and Morgan. But we are administratively tied to MNERD. They provide fiscal, legal, and HR support. They do a lot for us. All right. So again, the training timeline, obviously you're here, so you know about today's training. Our next training is August 21st. The webinars will be recorded and posted online. And so if you want to go back, you can scroll through there and look for specific portions if you want to hear something again or you missed something. This is our sequence of events or our timeline. And so highlighted in yellow, you can see the key one, which is again October 8th at 4 p.m., which is the due date for all applications. You can also see the deadline to submit written questions is September 24th. We do realize that that's a little late in the process. However, we wanted to give folks the full chunk of time to submit any questions they might have. And then we will post the response to all written questions on September 26th on the website RFP page. So again, if you're not sure, I would say submit any question that you have. Some of them we can't answer specific programmatic questions like I mentioned, but if you're not sure, submit it. We'll do our best to answer the questions. It might be a little generalized, but please feel free to submit questions. And those are the pretty much the key dates to keep an eye on. Coming up, the due date, of course. The selection for finalists happens in early November. The YCC Commission reviews and approves funding middle November, and the notification of funding will come out middle to end of November. And so if you submit an application, expect to hear from us regarding the funding piece by middle of November. There's a lot in between there that we might reach out to you as well. All right, so moving on. So eligibility, who's eligible to apply? So local units of government, including but not limited to counties, municipalities, villages, cities, towns, land grants, conservation districts, community associations, school districts, public universities, colleges, and charter schools, state agencies, federally recognized Native American tribes, and of course, nonprofits. And so basically, everyone except for-profit businesses are eligible to apply for the most part. Also, one thing to keep in mind is to take a look at this last statement here at the bottom. Applicants must be eligible to receive payment from the State of New Mexico Department of Finance and Administration, or DFA, either through transfer payments or state purchase orders. And so if you're maybe a newer nonprofit just starting out and you are not eligible to receive payment, and you're thinking about applying, definitely start the process now to look at the Department DFA website to see what is involved for getting set up. All right, so we're going to run through the scope of work right now. So we have a minimum of 5 core members that must be proposed and employed. And so, we have projects that propose up to 100 core members. But keep in mind that we do have a minimum of 5. So we will not accept applications that are proposing less than 5 members. Consider the needs of your community. Pretty self-explanatory there. And one thing to keep in mind is that you may not duplicate the routine services already provided by your agency or your organization. So if this is like a routine service that you already do, that you already have paid staff doing, your whatever you propose needs to be outside of what you already do. Some of the activities that are listed here, and so take a look at this list. This is not a full comprehensive list, but our projects such as rehabilitate or increase resiliency of aquatic species, improve or enhance recreational areas and facilities, reinforce the Keep New Mexico True campaign. If you're interested in that, you can take a look at their website, provide emergency assistance, disaster relief, or recovery. Very important as we move forward and we're seeing more disasters. Improve disaster preparedness, increase energy efficiency, beautify, improve, and restore urban areas, renovate community facilities, and provide or improve services for the elderly or indigent. So this was new last year. This last piece here. So provide or improve services for the elderly or indigent. So that's a little bit of a different piece of the scope or focus for projects that was added last year. So if that's something that you are working on or interested in, we can now accept applications that have that focus. I will pause really quick. Is there any questions? All right.
There is a question now.
All right. Sarah saying, my nonprofit organization is looking to do some much needed work on our land for fire mitigation habitat preservation. Is this considered outside or normal work? I would say, Sarah, that falls into the list of activities. And again, take a look at the RFP. Um, but just from like a 10,000 foot view, I would say that that would fall into the list that's here. And as far as the normal work, that's something that you would have to just consider as an organization, whether what you're planning for a YCC crew is what you're already doing as an organization. We're just looking to make sure that you're not duplicating what you're already doing. And so just something to think about. All right. Permissible project sites. So first we have public land. So projects may be planned and implemented on public lands, waters, structures within the state or federally recognized tribal lands, waters and structures within the states. So project sites may be under the jurisdiction owned or administered by the sponsor or accessible to the sponsor in accordance with a written agreement between the sponsor and the agency or entity that owns, administers, or has jurisdiction over the public or tribal property. So I wanted to read this one word for word because this one is pretty important and something to keep track as you're putting together your application. So primarily most of the projects proposed are on public land, but private land is an option as well. There's just some things that you really need to pay attention to if you're looking at private land, such as projects on private land must primarily benefit the public and provide only an incidental benefit to the private landowners. Project sites may be owned or administered by the sponsor or are accessible to the sponsor in accordance with a written agreement between the sponsor and the nonprofit organization. Sponsors must clearly demonstrate that projects on private land primarily benefit the public. Key piece there. This is one where I would say, this is only a piece of the RFP in this slide. Definitely read the RFP closely to see what the requirements are around proposing a project on private land. So yeah, check out the language in the RFP if that's something you're thinking about. Core member management. So the sponsors are responsible for all expenses tied to recruitment, hiring, and supervision. And so recruiting, hiring, and supervising is all on the sponsors. We do not really play a role in that other than if you have opportunities to share, like flyers and those kinds of things, we're happy to share those with the network and post those when we can. Um, they must be unemployed at the time of hire, and they must be between 14 and 25, and they need a work permit if they are under 16. Also, this is the nepotism clause here. Um, Children, siblings, or spouse of the sponsoring hiring officer or supervisor are not permitted to participate in the program. Again, minimum 5 core members. Also, this is important, they must be paid at least minimum wage and they follow the sponsor's policy for paid leave. And so basically, these folks are employees of your organization and are treated as such. And so if there's any kind of issues or anything, that's really on the sponsor organization to manage these folks as employees, just like any other employee with their organization. Training and education. So sponsors must design and plan to provide training and education curriculum for core members during the project. So 10% of the total hours budgeted for each core member for the entire project allocated for training. So as you'll see and you're working through the budget worksheet, um, and the cost proposal, there is a 10% requirement for training. And so there's a list of different training opportunities that folks have used in the past. So please pay attention to that. You can see these are the general kind of categories of training. These are listed out in full detail on the RFP with a little more information: job skills, career skills, life skills, agriculture, gardening, conservation, culture, public art, outdoor literacy, and further education. So we really want to see um, the training and education as a key piece of this program, since it is for youth and it really is a workforce development program. The training component is a very important part. I will pause there. Do we have any questions? All right, seeing none, moving on. Project length. So projects must be completed in 26 weeks or less. The project starts when the first core member is hired and ends 26 weeks later. Sorry, it looks like some of this got cut off here. So basically, the project period must cannot exceed 26 weeks. So that is part of our statute and something that we cannot change. We can, unfortunately, at this point, we can't extend that. And so you propose the dates of your project. Um, we do have some flexibility as long as the project hasn't started to listen to proposals if you want to change that after you've been awarded. We know that sometimes your best laid plans might change a little once you get to the actual time to execute the program. But it does need to be, it can't exceed 26 weeks. Budget allocation, wages, unemployment insurance, and workers' compensation insurance for core members shall account for a minimum of 70% of the total funds requested. So definitely something to make sure you pay attention to. And our budget worksheets will give you a red flag or won't allow you to proceed if you are not following that 70% threshold. So again, wages, unemployment insurance, and workers' compensation insurance for core members shall account for a minimum of 70% of the total funds requested. Morgan is going to review some of the budget components later, and we'll talk about that, and you can kind of see it in action. Budget match. So sponsors shall be prepared to match a minimum of 10% of total funds requested. This can be in kind or cash contributions. So it's just a 10% match. Insurance sponsors shall be prepared to provide adequate insurance coverage for any liability arising out of a program activities for the duration of the program. So permitted activities. So projects that provide a benefit to the public and again do not duplicate the applicant's routine services or functions are allowable. I won't read through this whole thing, but you could take a look at it. It is listed in the RFP. Again, all projects must provide a robust and broad training program. Prohibited activities, definitely pay attention to that. The displacement or substitution of an existing employee by a core member, which would be supplanting. Um, the the core members shouldn't be assigned to general routine services such as maintenance and like clerical or janitorial duties. Shouldn't be regularly like answering phones or doing janitorial duties. Um, except for these are activities that are necessary in preparation for the project. We're always concerned about the safety of the core members, so the participation of core members in the removal or cleaning up of toxic or hazardous waste is not allowable. funding permanent capital improvements on privately owned property, building any kind of structures, significantly improving facilities, etc. Watershed restoration is largely exempt. Just a few things to keep in mind. Again, please read the RFP in detail. Reporting requirements. Sponsors who receive an award must be prepared to submit detailed reimbursement requests with documentation for all expenses and match contributions. Morgan might touch on this a little bit later in her presentation. It's also in the RFP. Please take a look. We do have some very specific reporting requirements. I've been involved in a lot of different programs, and I think our reporting requirements are not too big of a lift. But please take a look at what the expectations are. Sponsors enter core member information and project status into the YCC project tracking database, and they send 2 photographs with each request for reimbursement. Our database has been around a while. It works. It can be a challenge, but right now it does work pretty well. Sponsors shall submit a reimbursement request for all expenses up to June 30th by July 15th. So this is the end of the state fiscal year. This is really important. We just worked through this with the current sponsors, just something to be aware of. And we do provide administrative training, a step-by-step manual, on-demand technical support and budget tracking tools. So see photographs of what? So basically, we're just looking for photographs of the members in action. What are they doing? Share with us the photographs of the members out in action or the staff supporting them. So from year to year, it differs, but we may have 40 plus sponsors, and we always try to get out to visit all the sponsors. But as you can imagine, there's 2 of us with all the sponsors located across the state. We just like to keep track and share stories as well, including photos. And so we just ask for a couple photos. That answers your question, Robin. And so as I mentioned, there's just the two of us, but we are here to support you all. We are very accessible. You can give us a call. You can email us. You can pop by the office. But we're here to provide support for sponsors, and we respond pretty quickly when folks reach out. All right, so this is for the actual proposal format and the contents that you'll be submitting if you decide to apply. So basically, there's the 2 primary documents here. There's the proposal response, basically the narrative packet, and we'll walk through that in detail. And then there's the cost response, which is the budget proposal. And so those get sent to me. And yeah, just take a look at the RFP so it's very clear what our requirements are for submission. You'll want to take a look at these general guidelines, which are listed in the documents, as far as what we're expecting as far as the items submitted. I'm looking at something in the chat here. Yes, thanks for sharing that. Yeah, so to make sure you take a look at the RFP for what our requirements are for submitting. Again, we'll talk in more detail about that a little later in this presentation. I will pause again. Is there any questions or comments? Morgan, do you want to add anything at this point?
No, I think you've been covering it.
Okay, thank you. Moving on. Submission instructions. So applicants need to submit completed proposals as a two-file attachment in one email addressed to me. I am the contact here. Keep in mind what the subject line should be, YCC proposal dash applicant name. You can submit as many applications as you'd like, but they just need to be one proposal per email. Proposals must be received no later than 4 p.m. Mountain Time on October 8th, 2025. Um, I know how it goes. Sometimes you're working on them to the last minute, but if you can submit them before the final deadline, um, I definitely recommend that. You never know, you might have an issue with the attachments or something. So, yeah, we recommend you submit a little early if possible, but we understand that sometimes that's not always possible. Um, we will not consider or accept any late proposals. So we do not have a process for receiving late proposals. Our submission process is pretty clear. Please pay attention to that. Any proposal that does not meet the format requirements as described in the sections outlined here may be deemed non-responsive and rejected on that basis. We talked about this during the timeline presentation. We welcome any questions that you might have. Please submit those by September 24th. We will respond and post the answers to all questions by September 26th. You can find those listed on the website. Criteria and evaluation. So you'll want to take a minute, and this is a chart that comes directly from the RFP, to take a look at how the applications are scored and evaluated. And this is the criteria that we're looking at. So we do have an external evaluation team or reviewers that are reviewing the applications. Pay special attention to the pass fails. Um, if you fail any of these, that'll result in your proposal being disqualified. So some of the key things, like we mentioned before, core wages are at least 70% of the funding requested. You can't go over the $225,000 cap. Um, you need to include your letter of transmittal form. So pay attention to that. Also pay attention to the scoring. As you're working on each individual section, you'll want to know how they are scored. Um, Important to just understand how we are evaluating your applications. I will pause again. Any questions? All right. So as I mentioned before, we will appoint an evaluation committee to evaluate proposals before before this RFP closes. So I am working on identifying folks for the evaluation committee. Um, Proposals that receive a fail will be disqualified and will not receive any further evaluation. So you really do need to pay attention to the pass or fail items. Proposals awarded a score of at least 70 points out of the total 100 points, as outlined in the section noted, will be recommended for funding to the commission. Contact person for clarification of proposals is myself, as I mentioned before. Of course, you may contact any legal counsel that you have. Um, Moving on. So we may award successful applicants funding up to $225,000 per project, and we will distribute funds equitably between urban and rural areas and to under-resourced populations. The commission may reduce an award from the amount requested in the proposal, provided the reduced funding does not jeopardize the viability of the project to proceed at the reduced funding level. So there are several reasons why we may propose to reduce the funding of projects. Just want you to be aware that that may happen. One of those reasons is if part of the proposal includes costs that are considered ineligible or contrary to state statutes. So that's just one of the reasons. Another reason may be that we get a lot of proposals and we'd like to award more grants and have more sponsors. But in order to do that, we may look at reducing some of the size or the cost of some of the proposals. We also reserve the right to withdraw the funding award if the successful sponsor fails to respond in a timely manner to YCC. I think this one is just pretty important to be aware of. There's just two of us. We have a lot to process once applications come in, and we're awarding we're making awards, we're putting contracts together. And so we reach out during that process if we need to, because we need specific things to move forward. And so we just ask that you please respond if we reach out and need something from you. So I just wanted to share that. So we may award contracts under the terms of the professional services agreement or for primarily for nonprofits or government services agreement. So we have two different contract templates. We have a PSA, which is the professional services agreement, or the GSA, governmental services agreement. So PSA is for nonprofits and GSA is for governmental entities. Tribal entities fall under that. Similar templates, but they are different and serve different purposes. The terms and conditions set forth in the draft agreement may be negotiated during the RFP process. And so there is a form in our proposal document where if you or maybe your legal department is looking at the draft contract and you see something that you want to propose a change to, we can consider that. You just need to make sure and include it in your proposal. If you do not propose any alternative terms and conditions during the application process, we will take that as your agreement to the contract templates that are in the RFP and will not accept suggested changes after the fact. So if you want to suggest any different terms and conditions, we do have a process for that, but please make sure it's included in your application. I will pause there. Any questions? All right, seeing none. Notices. So award of agreement is contingent upon sufficient appropriations and authorizations being made by the state of New Mexico. We may cancel the RFP and reject all proposals when it's in the interest of the state of New Mexico. Sponsors should be prepared to review and sign documents related to the award via DocuSign. So that is our primary method for signing contracts. So we do use DocuSign, so please be aware of that. We do not make any exceptions to that piece. We will also withdraw our award if the award offer of the sponsors do not take action within 90 days of notification. Again, this is basically administrative work that we need to do. And so if the sponsor is not responding in a timely manner, it does make life hard for us. And so you have 90 days to respond to notifications. We may cancel contracts who do not take action on the contract specifically within 45 days of first receipt. Contract templates and appendices, those are all in the RFP. Please take a look at those. I didn't include them in this PowerPoint, but they're clearly listed in the RFP. Again, if you want to propose changes to the terms and conditions, please feel free to do that. Other appendices are the photo release form and the New Mexico child labor laws that are listed there. All right, and so we are going to pause here. That basically concludes the PowerPoint presentation on the RFP. We're going to spend some time going through the proposal response and cost response. So those are the two documents that need to be submitted in your application packet. And can take a short break if you need to grab some coffee or use the restroom or anything while I pull that up. Also, feel free to ask any questions. You can put them in the chat now if you like. All right. Moving forward now, we will walk through the YCC Proposal Response 2026. This is basically half of your application. This is the one-stop shop. So everything you need to include other than the budget is in this document. And we have designed it so you can add items directly into this document. So as you'll notice on this first page, these are the acceptable signatures for this document. These are the ways that we can accept them. So you can see like a digital signature, like an Adobe one is acceptable, scanned and actual signatures, signed by drawing signature in Adobe, and DocuSign signatures are all acceptable. Please notice that you can't just type in text. Those are considered unacceptable. This is just basically for the forms in this document. The DocuSign requirement is for the contracts, which is different. All right, so this is the letter of transmittal form. This is where you're putting in your contact information and your organization's contact information. Here are where you'd list the folks that are authorized representatives for your organization that will be signing. You're going to use subcontractors. You need to identify that here. And this form, as I mentioned before, does require the signature. So this is where you would use the signature, the approved signature process is outlined in that first page to include a signature here. This one is for nonprofits specifically. Please provide the following if your organization is a nonprofit. Charter schools are exempt from these requirements, so we do need an IRS determination letter, a copy of your New Mexico charitable organization registration statement, a letter from the or a letter from the Department of Justice charity registrar, campaign contribution disclosure form, and a statement of insurances. So failure to complete or include these documents will result in the proposal being disqualified. Here is the campaign contribution disclosure form that was listed. See, there are fields for you to sign, to fill in and to sign. Statement of insurances. Please make sure you read this and sign this. So this is the section that I mentioned before. This is the negotiated contract terms. So this is where you would review, or if you have a legal team, review the sample contracts in Appendix A of the RFP and propose any other alternative language in the space below. So basically you would just write out what you're proposing. So if you have if you want to propose any changes to any terms and conditions, please include it here. If you leave it blank, we will not negotiate later. So please make sure and include any proposed changes in there. Again, if you leave it blank, which is fine, we just keep in mind that we cannot negotiate later. The PSA, again, is the Professional Services Agreement, and the GSA is the Governmental Services Agreement. Two different types of contracts. So make sure you are looking at the contract template that aligns with what your organization or entity is. Organizational experience and description. So describe the extent of your experience, expertise, and knowledge as a youth employer and trainer, and explain how your proposed work will align with child labor laws, which are included in the RFP. Provide descriptions for both applicant and any subcontractors that will be used to complete the project. So if, let's say you haven't really had experience as a youth employer, that's okay too, but you can describe in here what your plan is for working with youth. You know, we provide a good amount of space here. You do not need to fill out, you do not need to like fill up the whole block here, but this is a space for you to basically list your organizational experience. Moving on, this is the key list of key personnel and resumes. So basically, we just want to see a list of who's in charge, their directors, managers, who will supervise the crew, who will provide and coordinate training, and who will track the budget and prepare reimbursements. If a person or position will fill more than one role, please make that clear. And so you'll list those folks in the box here. And then please insert resumes or bios in the application after this page. So you would insert any resumes or bios or anything else that is tied to this section right here, basically, after you list in the box. And so you can just insert those into your packet, and they can go right in here. It's best if you can fit those in any attachments into the section in reference, so it's tied directly to like the personnel and resumes section. So again, you can include that right here. This is the proposal response. Insert your name, estimated start date, and how long the project will last. Again, as I mentioned earlier, we can be flexible, but put in your best guess here. Number of core members to be hired. Remember, you need to have at least 5, and an age range of youth to be hired. We understand some, if you have a project where your crew is using chainsaws, we understand that you'll probably have older folks, and so some projects are not suitable for all ages. Primary population served, project location, please list the locations, and please include your website if you have it. Recruitment and hiring. So describe the procedure for recruiting and hiring core members and include the description of how youth are recruited, the application process, selection criteria, and how the process is inclusive for youth who may lack resources such as internet connections or transportation. And so I would just kind of go through these bullets and make sure that you're addressing all of those items in the narrative that you include here. Again, it's okay and expected that you basically lean on and follow your organization's procedures and policies for hiring. If you want to include like a organizational handbook or excerpts from a handbook or policies, you can attach those as well. Project summary description. Actually, I'll pause there. I've been talking for a little bit. Any questions?
There is a question in the chat about resumes. Resumes in a compiled file or separately?
That's a good question. It doesn't matter as long as as long as all of the resumes are included and into this document. Does that track, Morgan, with what we've seen in the past? Do you know?
Yeah, most of the time they just insert resumes after that section.
Okay. All right, project summary description. So please include how the project contributes to youth career development, community or environmental benefits of the project, who the project partners and community supporters are and what they are contributing, and how the methods used will result in long-lasting value. Again, make sure you're addressing each of those bulleted statements there in your narrative that you include here. Safety protocol. Please describe the safety program you have planned for the YCC project. Good safety programs should include daily briefings, staff and core member training, and other established or proposed protocol. Pretty self-explanatory, so please put your safety protocol in there. All right, so we are at the work plans. So we have 10 of these included in this document. So you may not need all 10, you may need more. Um, Feel free to duplicate the page if you need more than 10. And also you can remove any extra work plans that you are not using. If you use 3 work plans, you can get rid of the other ones. Please do not use any kind of jargon or acronyms in these work plans. As I mentioned before, we'll have a large group of evaluators that may have different backgrounds and aren't and may not understand specific jargon or acronyms. So please use basic language in your work plan description. So you want to include the major tasks or benchmarks and details that someone not familiar with the project can understand how the work will be done. Project location, very important. Please make sure that's included. Property ownership, this is very important as well. Who owns the property where the work plan will take place? All right, this piece is very important as well. So provide the following attachment. So project area map. So roads, trails, streams, boundaries, and significant natural and developed features in the project area should be clear. A map or diagram with details such as treatments and installation locations, property owner certification and permits. So if the property owner is not the applicant, attach a signed dated letter on a letterhead from the property owner or manager certifying the applicant has permission to do the project on the property, private property locations, and all environmental and cultural evaluations and permits necessary to do the work. So for each work plan, you'll need to attach right after all of these documents. Um, that's where these packets can get a little long, but we tried to make it easy so you're just submitting, just the 2 documents, and so everything gets included in here. You just add it in. Again, these are all the same. Feel free to delete any that you don't need, or if you need more, you can let me know, or you can just copy the page. All right, so this is the alternative plans section here. So this is where basically you're sharing your alternative plans. We know things change out in the wild. For example, maybe your original project can't be executed. And so if you have an alternative plan, this is where you would put it. Um, you do not need to submit all of those attachments for your alternative plans at the time of submission for your main application here. If you get awarded and during your project period, if you do end up doing one of these alternative plans, then we will ask for those attachments and other information tied to that. So you don't need to submit all those for the alternative plans, but you'll just need to include any alternative plans in here that you might have. For example, activities for days of inclement weather or other short-term solutions. That's another reason for having an alternative plan. And emergency response. So, as we know, with like flooding in Ruidoso, fires, and all of the other things, I think emergency response is an important piece of what YCC crews can do. And so definitely encourage where it's safe and makes sense to have a plan in here for when a YCC crew will respond to a local emergency, floods, fires, food bank help, or other assistance. Um, and so if the time arises during your project period You would just contact our office, contact me for approval. And so you don't need to put a comprehensive plan in here for that, but just please state whether your crew could conceivably respond to any of these emergency situations. So this is the same language that's listed in the RFP. I had all of these headers listed in the PowerPoint. This is further explanation of the education program topics and different types of trainings are described below. Again, there is a list of the different trainings that different sponsors have used in the past. Take a look at that. That'll help jumpstart your mind on what kind of training program you want to design. All right, moving on. So this is just where you're going to record your plans basically for the name of your training. You could see presenter, provider, training type, number of hours per person, certification or license earned, and credit earned. There's two basic forms for that with a totals piece here in the bottom. So there's an example here. So a 13-week project with each core member working 40 hours a week, 13 weeks times 40 hours times 0.10 equals 52 hours of training per core member to meet the required 10%. So just something to keep in mind, the total hours need to be 10% of the project time. I will pause there. Any questions or Morgan, is there anything you want to add regarding that?
No, I think you covered it.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
All right, so I will now turn it over to Morgan to talk budgets. Feel free to put some questions in the chat while Morgan's getting set up.
Okay. Right. Can you see my screen? All right. Thank you, Robin. So I'm going to be going over two documents. The first one is a resource. It's the YCC Budget Development Worksheet. So this is just a tool for you to use to help develop your budget. You do not submit it with your proposal. You don't have to use it. It's just a resource for you. Sarah created this last year. I think it's a great tool. It has different scenarios in it, and it's just making sure that you're meeting those the minimum requirements. So 70% of the funding is going towards core member wages. The 30% is for other costs, and then you're getting your match. So there, she did a few different scenarios in here. So for your core member wages, if you know what you want to spend on that, and it's going to be less than 157,000, let's say it's going to be 100. You can input there, and it's going to show you the maximum amount you can ask for other costs. It's going to also show you the minimum match you need to have, which is the 10% of the total funds that you're requesting. The next scenario is for core member wages if they're more than 157,500. So you can see I put in here 160. So your maximum amount for other costs that you can request is going to be 65,000. And then again, it inputs your minimum match that you're going to need to have. The next one is the if you know the amount of funding you like to request. So let's say you want to request 125,000. your minimum for wages is going to be 87,500. And then it has your other costs there and your 10% that you need to have for your minimum match. And then there's a couple more here on the bottom. If you enter the amount of funding you like to allocate for other costs, say you know what you need for materials for your entire project, say 50,000. So you know your minimum wages are going to be 116 and some change. This has a nice formula input. So if you go over, let's say you want 230, that's over the amount that you can request. So you can see the color changes to red. So that's a nice little feature on this development worksheet, is if you're not meeting those minimum qualifications, it will highlight them in red. So it's something to play around with. Again, don't submit it. You don't have to use it, but it's a great tool. The next form is the cost response. This is the second form that you will be submitting in addition to the proposal response. It has 4 tabs. The first one is your budget summary. So this is going to be your total overall budget that you're requesting. This particular tab, you're not going to fill in anything on this except for your offer name. Everything else is locked and is going to automatically populate once you complete the additional tabs. So for example, for member wages, these will be, I went ahead and it inputted some numbers so you didn't have to watch me type this out. But you can change, you put in your workman's comp, let's say your unemployment is 1.5, and then I'll just leave FICA the same. So this will automatically calculate what you're requesting for your core members. You'll put in, if you have crew leaders or trainers, let's say you're just going to have 1 instead of 2, it will adjust. Your leaders are going to get paid a little more hourly. Your core members, a little less. Make sure you are hiring a minimum of 5. If, let's say, you just have 3 core members and your leader, you're not meeting that minimum requirement. The crew leader or trainer counts as a core member as long as they're between that 14 and 25 age range. So this number, once you input the total number of hires, what you're going to pay them hourly, how many hours per week, and then how many weeks, this number will automatically populate for your requests for wages. Other costs is your next tab. So this is everything else you need to get your project done. You can request salary for supervisors, project managers, educational training supplies. It lists everything up here in this top section. Administrative costs, materials, equipment. You can ask for mileage, fuel. And so you'll go through and you'll input down here what your other costs will be for your project. So I went ahead and I did mileage. The project, they're going to make benches. So lumber for 6 benches, how many units, how much it's going to cost. You don't need to list every nut and bolt. You know, you can say, like I did hardware for the benches. It's for the 6 benches, it's $10 a bench or whatever. Or let's say you need 10 units. You scroll to the bottom here, it'll automatically calculate it for you, 38,000, and this number will appear in your other costs on the first tab. Again, And there's formulas built in here. So if you're not meeting the minimum requirements, you'll see red. So you can see here the total funds requested with the other costs. We're not meeting that 70%. So if I go over, let's say we're going to hire 10 core members instead. Now it's changed to green because we are meeting that minimum requirement. So that's something to pay attention to. That is one of the pass or fails. So if you have anything in red, double check. The last tab is offer contribution or the match. This is the 10% that you need to match for your total requested funds. It can be volunteer time, training material supplies, equipment, rentals. I went ahead and put in HR admin time. The crew members are going to have some CPR training, volunteer time, some seed and mulch, maybe a field trip. The form will go ahead and calculate that up. You can see in red, we're at 6.7%, so we're not meeting that 10%. Let's say we need some fence posts, 10. Let's just do a high number so we can get that to green. And we're over that 10%. So then this number, your total contribution, will automatically populate on that first tab. Is there any questions on, I should have asked after the budget development worksheet, any questions on either of those forms? Yeah, so again, on the first tab, there's nothing that you need to complete. It's going to be locked. It's all formulas in there. It's these other 3 tabs that are important, except for the name. Put your name. Mm-hmm. Any questions? All right.
All right. Thank you, Morgan. Looks like someone might be typing a question out. Will admin overhead be allowed? Do you want to cover that, Morgan? Or
So yes, administrative costs would be allowed. Is that the question?
I believe
Yes.
so. So basically, admin overhead is allowed, but you'll just want to keep in mind that you need to stay within the percentages as outlined in the budget. And so it's a little tricky to put a lot of admin overhead in there. Yeah, so like I said, you'll just need to stay within the designated percentages. If you run into any issues with any of those forms, the budget forms specifically, just let us know. We did, the form is locked, you know, for yours and our benefit. Little pro tip here, if you're using a small screen, like your computer screen is small, or you're looking at the budget worksheet and it's not maximized, sometimes the numbers get grayed out basically because the cell isn't big enough. The way to address that is to just make the size of the sheet larger. So so it just expands it. You're not like changing it at all, but you can just expand the sheet and it should make the numbers visible. But again, if you run into any issues with any of the forms, just let me know, and we can fix that and work with you to work it out. Any other questions? So again, take a look at the other resources. I'm going to share a couple of them really quick before we end. Just move my screens around. Sharing the field trip sites. This is a cool document. Use this for planning summer trips with my family. Again, I think Morgan, you made this list right. It's just a neat, comprehensive list of different sites in New Mexico to visit. Field trips for your cruise. Lots of neat things in here. A lot of destinations I wasn't aware of. So please feel free to take a look at that. Past projects. So this just takes you to another section of our website here. So you can see the different funding levels, the match. It's a good idea to kind of peruse through these, especially if this is your first time applying. So you can kind of get a sense of like the size and scope of some of the other past projects. You can also take a peek at the pictures. We talked about pictures before. These are the kind of pictures that we're asking for. Crew members in action, doing some trail building here. Again, these are great opportunities for youth to work as teams. Some really neat projects. Great growth opportunity. I feel really honored to have been selected for this position and to work on such an amazing program that does a lot for New Mexico youth. See, someone might be putting in another question. Thanks, Lisa. Thanks for showing up today. I think that basically ends our presentation for the day. Morgan, anything else to add and anything I missed?
No, on that past project page, there also is a link to the Sunshine Portal where we do upload all of our past contracts, and on those it includes the proposals for our past projects. So that's also a good resource if you want to see what past proposals look like, and the cost responses will be on there as well. So that's a great resource to see what's been approved in the past.
Great. Thank you, Morgan.
Mhm.
So finally, our RFP's only been out for a couple of weeks, so you may not have had a lot of time to read through there. So we understand you may come up with some questions. You're definitely welcome to come to our next training as well. It will be live. I will post the recording of this training so you can go back and take a look at any of the different portions of the training if you like. Again, the applications are due October 8th. Please submit questions in writing to me directly per the guidance. See, we have another question here. Robin is saying up to 225,000 may be requested. Then the RFP states YCC shall pay the sponsor for services satisfactory performed. Do you know the answer to that question, Morgan? Want to double check.
No, I guess I'd need to review the RFP.
Give me 1 second.
Oh, I see. Okay, so that is that's an example contract. So I think when I do my quick search here, so that is an example of our GSA, or the contract for the government contracts, and that's just an example. So that particular sponsor, they were awarded 137,569. That makes sense.
Thanks, Morgan.
Yeah.
And we will go back and look at all the questions posed in the chat here and add those to the Q&A that'll be posted on September 27th, I believe. So we will hang out another couple minutes if anyone has any other questions. I'd like to thank you all for showing up here today. Good luck on your applications if you decide to submit. Hope to see as many as possible. Feel free to share the opportunity in your networks if you like. But with that, that concludes our training today. I hope you all have a great weekend. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.